Hello, and welcome to this pre-recorded feedback event for the June 2015 examination for Children's Play, Learning and Development, Level 2, Unit 1, Patterns of Child Development. To help you get the most out of this feedback, you may want to have the following documents handy, as we will refer to them during the session. These are the aims and objectives that will be covered in today's session. You will receive feedback on national performance of learners of the June 2015 examination series, consider questions where significant numbers of learners underperformed and possible reasons why, discuss examiner's report, consider delivery strategies and share good practice, address common issues, find out about further support available. The purpose of this review of external assessment is to cover the following aspects: content, assessment objectives, skills and knowledge tested, structure of assessment. This is an example of a response from question 6, for which 2 marks were awarded. The response required an identification of what fine motor development is. In this response, the candidate has responded with, "When you use your fingers," gaining 1 mark. 1 further mark is awarded as the candidate has provided a relevant example, for example, holding a pencil to write. Here is an example of a response for question 6, where the candidate has been awarded 1 mark for an appropriate example, picking up objects. For the rest of the response, the candidate has merely repeated the text from the question. Repetition of the question was a common theme observed in responses from learners. It is important that learners are supported in interpreting what questions are asking of them. In this instance, the command verb state requires learners to identify its meaning and provide an appropriate example. Learners generally performed well on question 6. Many learners were able to provide specific definitions and examples. Responses demonstrated learners had a good understanding of this aspect of physical development. Responses could be improved by ensuring that learners are aware that questions carrying 2 marks usually require them to provide a definition and an appropriate example. This is an example of a response to question 8, for which the learner has been awarded 2 marks. The learner has correctly identified that emotional and social development links to language development and has provided an appropriate link to build relationships. This learner did not do so well on this question. Although they have correctly identified that social development links to language development, they have not provided an appropriate link, as learning words relates more to language or cognitive development. Learners generally performed well on question 8. Most learners were able to identify another area of development with good examples. Responses demonstrated learners' good understanding of the interrelated nature of children's development. Responses could be improved by encouraging learners to avoid providing examples that could be linked to language and communication. This is the first activity which provides you with an opportunity to mark a question that requires learners to provide a linked response. Please use your mark scheme to award marks. You can pause the recording at this point to carry out the activity if you wish. This response was awarded a total of 2 marks. Although the learner has not quoted exactly what appears in the mark scheme, providing appropriate games, they have correctly identified a game that would support cognitive development. 1 mark was awarded for an appropriate link, imagination or memory, which does appear in the mark scheme. Key message: where a total of 2 marks are available, encourage learners to develop their answers by providing appropriate examples and to avoid repeating the question. This is an example of a question that has been awarded 2 marks. The learner has correctly identified how they can meet the child's physical needs by providing an environment where the child can rest and sleep, for 1 mark. 1 further mark has been awarded for aiding the child's growth. This response has been awarded a total of 1 mark. Although the learner has correctly identified providing opportunities for the child to be outdoors, they have not extended their response to clarify how being outdoors will help support an aspect of their physical development, for example, to provide vitamin D for bone strength. Many learner responses focused on activities and not one other way to provide for a child's physical development. A number of responses focused on developing fine and gross motor skills with no further expansion. Responses could be improved by encouraging learners to read the questions carefully to avoid providing examples that do not relate to the question. Learners fell into the trap of giving responses that were not related to the question. The question signposted the learner away from providing examples of activities which formed a common response for this question. This is an example of a response where the learner has been awarded 2 marks. 1 mark for identifying the child may have anger problems, and 1 further mark for identifying that the child may have difficulty in making new friends or developing friendships. This response has been awarded a total of 1 mark. Although the learner has correctly identified that Rosie may be shy, the learner has not been specific as to how being shy could relate to her social development. This is an example of a response for question 14A, which has been awarded 3 marks. In the first example, the learner has been awarded 1 mark. Although the learner has identified that the child can be provided with activities, they have not been specific in providing age-appropriate play that relates to promotion of emotional and social development. 1 mark has been awarded for encouraging socialization. In the second example, the learner has been awarded 2 marks. 1 mark for encouraging bonding and a secure relationship, and 1 further mark for an appropriate link, building self-esteem and confidence. Generally, where learners did well on questions of this nature, for example, where learners did well, they were able to provide good responses with linked, age-appropriate examples. Most learners were able to differentiate between emotional and social development. Where learners did not do so well on questions of this type, they repeated the question, provided examples that were not related to the focus of the question, provided responses that were not specific. This is an activity which provides you with a further opportunity to mark a similar question to the ones that have already been discussed. Please use your mark scheme to award marks. You can pause the video at this point to carry out the activity if you wish. The learner has been awarded a total of 4 marks for this question. In the first example, they have been awarded 1 mark for asking questions such as, "What are you doing?" and 1 further mark for a linked response, answering back, which links to encouraging communication. In the second example, the learner has an appropriate activity that would encourage Mo's language development. 1 further mark has been awarded for repeat your actions, copy what you are saying, which links to encouraging repetition. Overall, learners did well on this type of question, where they were required to provide linked examples. Successful learners covered all aspects of the question. Work was mainly non-repetitive. Were able to provide age-appropriate linked examples. Learners who did not do so well did not always provide a linked example, did not always provide an appropriate linked example. This is an example of a response that achieved 2 marks. 1 for doing story time and 1 further mark for involving Mo in speaking and interacting, encouraging communication. The learner has provided no extension, for example, doing story time to encourage Mo's communication skills. Learners appeared somewhat confused by this question. It may be because thought precedes language and communication, which may have thrown learners. However, there were further issues with this type of question in that some learners failed to answer the question. Many responses focused on the impact of communication but failed to cite specific valid examples of how it would help support Mo's language development. Some learners failed to gain marks as they merely repeated the question. Key point: this example shows how the learner has become confused and merely repeats parts of the question. In answering questions of this type, focus learners so they produce a succinct response. For example, by asking Mo questions about her holiday, for 1 mark, will help to develop her thought processes, for a further 1 mark. Here is a further opportunity for you to mark a similar question which requires a 2-part response. Please use your mark scheme to award marks for question 16A. You can pause the video at this point to carry out the activity if you wish. Zero marks have been awarded for the first example. Although in the previous example 1 mark was awarded for socializing with peers, this example only states she can communicate the easier, repeating the question and communication. The second example has been awarded 1 mark for understanding numbers, which relates to develop numeracy in the mark scheme. However, no further marks have been awarded as the learner has not identified how it will support Mo's cognitive development, only her communication development. This example illustrates a typical approach students have taken to these types of question, where they repeat aspects of the questions. This is an example of a learner who did well on question 17 and has been awarded marks within the Level 2 band. The learner has identified a range of areas of development and growth and has described these in some detail. The points made are relevant and age-appropriate. However, the learner has not identified how physical growth would be promoted, which would place this response to mark band Level 3. This is a typical example of a response where learners have not done so well. In this example, the learner has not provided specific examples of how the adult should support a child during the first 6 months of life. Rather, they have generalized, and the examples they have provided are not specific nor age-appropriate. This response was awarded a mark in the lower band of Level 1. This is an activity which provides you with an opportunity to mark this question. Please use your mark scheme to award marks. You can pause the recording at this point to carry out the activity if you wish. This response would be awarded a mark in the upper mark band of Level 2. the learner has identified how adults can support a child's language development through providing age-appropriate example of making cooing sounds, supporting a child's physical development by encouraging them to grasp toys, supporting a child's social and emotional development by socializing them with other babies and making facial expressions, supporting a child's growth through providing opportunities for the child to sleep. To have been awarded Mark Band Level 3 marks, this learner would need to include an example for cognitive development. Overall, this question attracted a range of responses. Successful learners covered all aspects of the question. Work was structured and provided age-appropriate examples of a range of areas of development, demonstrated a good understanding of the interrelated nature of child development. Learners who did not do so well identified few areas of development, examples were not age-appropriate, examples were superficial or generic, not applied to how the adult should support children's growth and development. There were a number of common issues identified where learners lost valuable marks. For example, failing to read the questions thoroughly, misinterpreting what questions required learners to achieve, not making links or expansions to two-part questions, not making age-appropriate links to other areas of development. Where examples or expansions given, they were general and not age-specific. Repeating the question in the answer, not addressing command verbs fully, particularly in discussion questions. The questions on the paper have been commented upon in the lead examiner's report. This is a further resource for you to use in understanding the requirements of each question and how learners have interpreted and responded to them. Some of the information from the report has been used in this presentation and is aimed to help you gain further understanding of how best to design delivery strategies to support best practice. The report can be shared with learners to help them understand what is required of the different types of questions and how they can gain marks. For further support and feedback relating to this external assessment, please visit our dedicated BTEC results web pages via the link shown here. And finally, to access lots of useful support and resources for CPLD, email teachingchildcare@pearson.com to join the mailing list. We hope you have found this presentation useful. We constantly look to improve the delivery of our training and appreciate all delegate feedback. You will soon receive an email directing you to our online feedback form. The form takes no more than a couple of minutes to complete. Please take the time to let us know your thoughts by filling in this short form. All those who complete the online form will be able to enter themselves in the prize draw with a chance of winning a £100 Amazon.co.uk gift card. There will be one winner drawn every 3 months, from those who enter during the preceding 3 months.